Oh, I guess I'm not going.
You can't come. You need to wear a bag that says, I'm normal.
That's not who you married. I really love wearing red. I just feel like...
You feel like aloofa? Girl, it's time to take a shower.
Get out. Get out.
Got it.
So I got all these coffee syrups. I'm cleaning out the bottle.
No.
Huh?
Don't clean up this kitchen.
Yum. You want to taste it?
No.
Yes, you do.
From the outside, Kristy and Desmond Scott looked like the kind of couple people used as proof that growing up together could actually work. High school sweethearts, built from the ground up love, 2 kids, a dream house, a shared brand. The kind of relationship that made people believe longevity still meant something in the influencer world. But the moment Kristy filed for divorce on December 30th, everything people thought they knew about their marriage unraveled fast. Because once the papers hit, it became clear this wasn't a sudden breakup. This was the collapse of something that had been dead for a long time.
The Perny bag with my matcha to go. Shoes from Bottega.
Why are you doing that? Can we eat? I'm hungry.
And you ready?
You need to leave that here.
No, I'm bringing it.
You gonna clean
And
it
we're off.
too.
But it came with this hat and it sold me. Like, okay, and then some pointy-toed heels.
You look like you're
Or like
going
to
to
the
the zoo.
Yeah, to the zoo. Let's take it to the zoo.
But you on the wrong side of the glass. I feel looking like a leopard.
Your mama, your granny, and your daddy.
Where are you hiding from?
Your mama.
Kristy and Desmond met when they were barely teenagers, 14 years old. They grew up together, dated through adolescence, and married young, 19 and 20, before either of them had fully figured out who they were as individuals. For years, that history was romanticized. All they know is each other. They built everything together. They're a real family. And in a way, that was true. They didn't just build a relationship together. They built an entire digital empire side by side. Their social media presence, their money, their lifestyle, their fame, all of it was intertwined. Every video, every post, every sponsored moment relied on the idea that they were solid.
I just want to fight.
Why are you so violent?
Kristy, please.
I'm like, why is it sticking out here? Why is it sticking out here?
And this is Desmond's outfit of the day.
Hey, I'm fly. I got on black pants and a black top.
Anyway.
I think you look like a garden that got burnt.
A garden that got burnt.
It's black flowers. I ain't never seen a black flower.
Yeah, outfit of the day. Linebacker.
Yeah, you look like a linebacker.
Desmond doesn't understand fashion.
If that is, I don't want to understand.
Anyway, so I have this stuff. What do you think? Wait, this is option number 1.
It's a no.
Why? Why? You're not proud? And then my favorite accessory to this outfit is this box of chocolates bag, because Desmond didn't get me a box of chocolates when I asked for some.
When did you ask me for some box of chocolates?
Like 6 months ago. And then I have these pointy-toed.
But what people didn't see at first was how quickly their paths started to split. Kristy was the one who took off first. She leaned into fashion, lifestyle, and personal branding in a way that opened doors Desmond never walked through. She became the recognizable face, the one invited to award shows, the one brushing shoulders with celebrities, the one being seen in rooms where influence mattered. Desmond followed with his own lane, cooking content, personality-driven posts, supportive husband energy. But the imbalance was obvious to anyone paying attention. Kristy wasn't just growing. She was outgrowing the space they shared. And that kind of shift changes dynamics fast. At first, it looked like playful tension, teasing, sarcasm, couple humor. Kristy would snap food out of his hands on camera, mock his outfits, jokingly insult his appearance. Desmond would laugh, but it never looked natural. It looked forced. The kind of laugh you give when you're trying to keep the peace, not enjoy the moment. Looking back now, those videos don't read as comedy. They read as resentment leaking through content.
A battery make a roll battery.
That's like those bibs for babies.
Anyways, so.
No.
I really thought that was.
Kristy.
I don't want the fumes in my.
There were moments where Kristy's tone felt sharp instead of playful. Moments where Desmond looked disengaged, annoyed, or distant, staring at his phone while she performed for the camera. Moments where he looked embarrassed rather than amused, especially when Kristy leaned into her over-the-top persona in public settings. The Gucci store clip, the grocery store outfits, the constant, "I know I'm not your piece" jokes. All of it was framed as humor. But humor has a way of exposing truth when people are tired of pretending. Kristy was loud. Desmond was shrinking. And the more Kristy leaned into being unapologetically herself, the more Desmond seemed uncomfortable with the attention she attracted. His comments started sounding less playful and more passive-aggressive. His reactions more stiff, his energy less present. That's when people started saying it out loud. They don't even like each other anymore. Still, they kept filming, because when money is attached to a marriage, leaving isn't just emotional. It's financial. Ending the relationship meant dismantling the brand they'd built together. So instead of addressing the tension, they kept posting through it, smiling through it, monetizing through it, until they couldn't. When Kristy filed for divorce, the reason she cited was clear: adultery. No vague language, no soft framing. Cheating. Desmond responded with a statement that told more than he probably intended. He admitted he wanted to separate. He admitted that during that separation, he made choices he wasn't proud of. And while he tried to frame it as mutual struggle, the message underneath was obvious. He had already checked out, and he acted on it. That's when everything clicked. Because once you accept that Desmond had been mentally done before the filing, the rest of the timeline starts making sense. The distance, the disengagement, the wandering eyes, the way he looked like someone waiting for permission to live differently. Then the video dropped. January 11th, a bar, a corner booth. Desmond sitting with another woman in his lap, kissing her like the room didn't exist. Not shy kisses, not discreet affection, intense, public, unapologetic intimacy. The timing was brutal. The divorce filing had just gone public days before. Kristy had barely had time to process the public announcement of the end of her marriage. And there he was, already moving on loudly. That moment alone told people everything they needed to know. This wasn't a man heartbroken over losing his family. This wasn't someone grieving a 12-year marriage. This was someone relieved to be free. And that's why so many people believe the cheating didn't start during separation. It started long before. The bar video didn't look like a rebound. It looked like familiarity, comfort, like behavior that had already been normalized. People started asking the obvious questions. Who is this woman? Is she the reason the marriage ended? Was she around before the separation? Nobody has definitive answers, but the optics are loud. And then, when you revisit the old content with fresh eyes, the red flags are everywhere. The fake laughter, the tension disguised as jokes, the way Kristy seemed irritated instead of affectionate, the way Desmond looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. They weren't growing together anymore. They were tolerating each other for the sake of the camera, and tolerance has an expiration date. The saddest part is that this didn't have to end like this. Growing apart doesn't automatically mean betrayal. Wanting out doesn't require humiliation, but Desmond's actions made it clear that he wasn't just done. He was done pretending. Kristy, on the other hand, looked blindsided, not by the divorce itself, but by how quickly he abandoned the image of the family they built together. How easily he stepped into someone else's arms while the ink on the filing was still fresh. 12 years, 2 children, a shared history from adolescence to adulthood, and it still ended with cheating. This wasn't just a breakup. It was the exposure of everything they'd been hiding behind the camera. And once that illusion shattered, there was no going back to pretending. Once the bar video hit the internet, the narrative around Kristy and Desmond shifted overnight. What used to be framed as 2 young people who grew apart suddenly looked a lot darker. Because growth doesn't usually come with secrecy, resentment, and public disrespect. That kind of ending doesn't happen overnight. It happens after months, sometimes years of emotional decay. And when people started revisiting Kristy and Desmond's old content with that context in mind, the cracks became impossible to ignore. There were signs that Kristy wasn't just annoyed, she was exhausted. The playful jabs weren't landing like jokes anymore. They landed like frustration. When she snapped food from Desmond's hands, talked over him, or dismissed him on camera, it didn't feel spontaneous. It felt habitual. Like she'd been suppressing irritation for so long that it just started leaking out wherever it could. Desmond, meanwhile, looked checked out in a way that went beyond boredom. He wasn't engaged. He wasn't amused. Half the time, he looked like someone waiting for the scene to end so he could escape. The forced smiles, the delayed laughter, the way he'd look away from the camera instead of into it, all of it screamed detachment. And detachment doesn't come from nowhere. People close to the situation say the power dynamic in their marriage changed drastically once Kristy's career took off. She wasn't just successful, she was visible. She was validated by the outside world in ways Desmond wasn't. Invitations, recognition, access. She was stepping into rooms where she wasn't just someone's wife. She was the main character. For couples who grow together from such a young age, that kind of imbalance can feel threatening, especially when one person's identity becomes public-facing and the other starts to feel secondary. Desmond wasn't just losing control of the narrative, he was losing relevance inside the relationship. That's when resentment creeps in. Instead of addressing it directly, it showed up in passive ways. Side comments, sarcasm, eye rolls, moments where he'd undermine her fashion choices or make jokes that felt more dismissive than playful, moments where he'd subtly criticize the very things that were elevating her career. Kristy responded by leaning in harder. Bigger outfits, bigger energy, bigger presence, almost like she was daring him to either catch up or step aside. And that tension became content. Fans laughed it off at first because influencer couples normalized dysfunction under the guise of realness. But when the divorce news dropped, people realized they weren't watching playful chaos. They were watching a marriage unravel in real time. Then came Desmond's statement. On the surface, it sounded accountable. He admitted fault. He admitted he wanted to separate. He admitted to making choices he wasn't proud of. But between the lines, the message was clear. He had emotionally exited before Kristy ever had a chance to process the end. That matters, because when one partner checks out mentally before the other even knows there's a problem, the breakup stops being mutual. It becomes unilateral, strategic, controlled by the person who already decided to leave. Kristy filing for divorce after discovering the betrayal wasn't impulsive, it was reactive. It was the response of someone who realized the marriage she was still investing in had already been abandoned. And the bar video confirmed her worst fears. This wasn't someone taking time to heal. This wasn't someone confused about his feelings. This was someone who looked relieved, comfortable, almost eager to be seen with someone new. That's why the public reaction was so harsh. People weren't just disappointed. They were offended on Kristy's behalf. Offended that after 12 years, after children, after building a life together, Desmond couldn't even pretend to respect the gravity of what was ending. The optics were brutal. And once the cheating was no longer just a rumor but part of the official divorce filing, people started connecting dots that had been ignored for years. Like how Desmond always seemed irritated when Kristy commanded attention. Like how he'd disappear emotionally in videos while she carried the performance. Like how she openly joked about not being his piece, which in hindsight sounds less like humor and more like truth disguised as content. Kristy wasn't pretending to be perfect, but she was consistent. She showed up. She invested. She believed they were still building something, even when the energy shifted. Desmond didn't, and when people say they despised each other, what they really mean is that love had been replaced by obligation. Obligation to the brand, obligation to the audience, obligation to the life they built. But obligation doesn't stop temptation. When someone feels left behind, unseen, or emasculated by success, especially when they don't have the emotional tools to communicate it, they look for validation elsewhere. Attention, desire, escape. And Desmond found that escape. The tragedy isn't just that he cheated, it's that he did it while still benefiting from the image of a stable family man. Still filming, still smiling, still letting Kristy believe they were working through normal marital challenges. That's what people can't forgive. Because cheating doesn't just break trust, it rewrites history. It turns moments that felt real into moments that feel fake in hindsight. Every laugh becomes suspicious. Every affectionate post feels staged. Every "we're good" moment feels like a lie. For Kristy, that realization had to be devastating. She didn't just lose her husband. She lost the version of her life she thought she was protecting. The family unit, the partnership, the future she assumed they were still aligned on. and she had to process all of that publicly. Meanwhile, Desmond moved like someone who had already grieved privately, someone who had already detached emotionally long before the paperwork was filed. That imbalance is what made the breakup feel cruel. And now, with everything exposed, people aren't just questioning Desmond's actions. They're questioning how long Kristy had been tolerating unhappiness for the sake of keeping everything together. Because staying doesn't always mean things are working. Sometimes it just means you're trying harder than the other person. And in this case, once Desmond stopped trying, the marriage didn't just end, it collapsed under the weight of everything they refused to confront. By the time everything became public, it was clear this divorce wasn't just about infidelity. That was the spark. But the fire had been burning long before anyone saw the smoke. Because when people really started unpacking Kristy and Desmond's dynamic, it became obvious that love had slowly been replaced by resentment. Not loud hatred, not explosive arguments, but that quiet, corrosive kind that grows when two people stop feeling like teammates and start feeling like obstacles in each other's lives. They didn't fall apart suddenly. They unraveled. Kristy grew louder, bolder, more unapologetic in her presence. Not because she wanted to embarrass him, but because she was evolving. She was finding herself in rooms that validated her creativity, her ambition, her individuality. And when one partner is expanding while the other feels stuck, the gap becomes impossible to ignore. Desmond didn't just feel left behind, he felt unnecessary. That's a dangerous place for a marriage to land. Instead of confronting that insecurity head-on, it showed up sideways. Withdrawal, passive aggression, emotional distance masked as humor. Moments where he looked irritated by the very things that made Kristy shine. Moments where he seemed more annoyed than amused, more resentful than supportive. Kristy, on the other hand, appeared to be overcompensating, doing more, performing more, almost daring him to re-engage, to meet her where she was instead of watching from the sidelines. And when that didn't happen, the disconnect became permanent. What hurts most in situations like this isn't just the cheating. It's the realization that one person stayed committed to fixing something the other had already abandoned. Kristy was still showing up emotionally, still investing in the marriage, still believing in us, while Desmond had already started imagining a life beyond it. That's not a shared ending. That's a quiet betrayal. And when the bar video surfaced, it didn't just confirm infidelity, it confirmed indifference. There was no hesitation, no guilt, no attempt to lay low, just someone fully embracing a freedom they'd been waiting for. That's what made it sting, because if Desmond had wanted out respectfully, there were 1,000 ways to leave with dignity. Private conversations, counseling, time apart handled discreetly. But instead, he moved like someone who had been counting down the days until he could stop pretending. And Kristy felt that. Sources close to her say the hardest part wasn't discovering the cheating. It was realizing how long she had been the only one fighting. How many moments she'd mistaken silence for peace. How many red flags she'd brushed off because she believed history meant commitment. 12 years together creates a dangerous illusion, that longevity equals loyalty. But time doesn't guarantee effort. And once that truth set in, the marriage couldn't survive it. What makes this story hit differently is how visible the decay was in hindsight. The snappy jokes, the awkward laughter, the way affection looked forced instead of natural. The moments fans once labeled quirky now read like unresolved tension playing out on camera. They weren't joking, they were coping. And when coping becomes content, the relationship is already in trouble. For Desmond, cheating didn't come out of nowhere. It came from entitlement mixed with insecurity. The belief that separation gave him permission. That emotional detachment justified physical betrayal. That because he had already checked out mentally, his actions didn't count as damage. But that's not how commitment works. For Kristy, filing for divorce wasn't revenge. It was clarity. It was the moment she stopped protecting someone who had already chosen himself at her expense. The moment she realized staying loyal to the marriage meant betraying herself. And that's a line she wasn't willing to cross anymore. What's heartbreaking is that their children are now part of this story. Kids who will one day see how everything unfolded. Who will learn, through example, what happens when communication breaks down and resentment goes unchecked. That's the real cost of pretending. Because marriages don't end because people grow. They end because people stop growing together. And once that happens, cheating isn't the cause. It's the symptom. Now, Kristy appears focused on rebuilding. Not just her brand, but her sense of self outside of us. Outside of compromise. Outside of carrying a relationship that had been emotionally one-sided for far too long. Desmond, meanwhile, is facing a public reckoning. Not just for cheating, but for how casually he discarded a partnership that helped build the life he enjoys today. People aren't just disappointed. They're disillusioned. Because this wasn't a random influencer breakup. This was a marriage that started in adolescence, survived fame, built wealth, raised children, and still collapsed because emotional honesty came too late. And that's the lesson buried underneath all the drama. Love doesn't fail because people change. It fails because people stop communicating when they do. So now the question isn't just who cheated, it's who stopped choosing the relationship first. And once you answer that, everything else starts to make sense. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Kristy ignored the red flags for too long? Or do you think Desmond checked out emotionally long before the cheating ever happened? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if this breakdown helped connect the dots, and make sure you're subscribed. Because stories like this always reveal more than what's posted on camera.